Story 1. I was a swim teacher once upon a time. I taught all age groups, from infants doing water acclimation with a parent to high school students. You could drop me in the water with up to 10 kids, and everyone would have a safe and enjoyable experience. In all the years I did this, I only had one student who posed a serious challenge. This child could not swim more than 2 feet and could not tread water just like the rest of his classmates, who were around 8 years old. The problem was that this student refused to follow the rules. When we practiced jumping into the pool, he would not wait his turn, which was dangerous since I only had 2 arms and was usually catching another child at the time. When we worked on climbing up and down the ladder, he would sneak behind my back and jump in. During hand-over-hand practice along the pool wall, he would climb over the other kids and move in the wrong direction. He would push off from the wall, start struggling, and after I pulled him back, he would immediately try again. He was becoming a distraction, a risk to the other children, and most importantly, a danger to himself. I finally asked him to get out of the pool and sit with his back against the wall, about 3 feet from the pool's edge, where he was still in full view of the lifeguard. I told him to stay there until I returned. I then guided the rest of the class through the hand-over-hand drill to the end of the pool and back. It only took about 90 seconds, but it wasn't safe to have him in the deep end while I was occupied. When we finished, I invited him to rejoin the group for the rest of the lesson. For the next 20 minutes, he was a completely different student. He listened carefully, followed every rule, stayed with the group, and held on to the wall when he was supposed to. There were no more surprise jumps or risky moves. The issue seemed resolved, and I thought that was the end of the matter. Or so I believed. After that lesson ended, and before the next class began, the pool director asked me to follow him to the bleachers where parents could sit and watch. There, I was met by an upset mother whose frustration was clear in her expression. With narrowed, unblinking eyes, she told me firmly, "Never do that again. The only person who is allowed to discipline him is his father." I calmly told her that the safety of her son, as well as the safety of the other students in the pool, was my first responsibility. I explained that her son needed to follow the rules, period, because in the water, rules are what keep everyone safe. I added that if she wanted to have a longer discussion about it, there was still one more class that day, and afterward I would have all the time in the world to sit down and talk with her. Throughout this exchange, the pool director stood silently by my side. He did not interrupt, correct me, or step in. The mother walked away with a stiff posture, clearly unhappy. I moved on to teach my next class as scheduled. Later, while I was retrieving pool toys from the bottom of the pool, the director glanced at me, shook his head slightly, and walked off without saying a word. He never brought the matter up again. As for the student, he did not return for the next 3 lessons. Story 2. So my husband and I purchased this home less than a year ago. It's an old Victorian house with the wraparound porch that was completely gutted and updated from the plumbing to the electricity, and the yard completely landscaped. The front yard has a huge tree, and my husband had a swing installed on one of the branches last summer. I say this to say that even though it's cold, icy, and snowy outside, it's still enticing to children, as all the snow in the driveway has been moved to where the grass would be, and it's like a big hill of snow and well now ice. We have an 8-foot gate surrounding our property, and a sign on one of the brick columns at the entrance that says "No trespassers." So I was getting a little cabin fever, and nothing I did was making my infant daughter stop crying. I just felt like she just had it with being in the house, so I wrapped her up really well, in a snowsuit and a blanket. I put her in a stroller, I put my coat on, and I just thought I'd go out and take us for a walk. So we saw something other than the yard. I thought I'd walk a few blocks down to a local coffee shop and get me some coffee and walk back home. I did just that and left the gate open to the property because I was just going to be gone 30 minutes tops. We've never had a problem in the year that we've been living here leaving the gate open when we left the house. When I come back, I see this woman on my porch with her kids playing in the snow in my front yard. Me, hello. Karen, hello. This is not a park. This is private property and you're trespassing. Please leave. Well, you have this big yard to yourself. You could at least share it. My kids don't have much room in their backyard to play, but you have a swing and everything. So sorry, that is not my problem, but if you don't leave, I will call the cops. I don't have time for you, Karen. My name is not Karen, it's Melody, and you don't have to be rude. You don't have to be trespassing on private property. Either there is a sign right at the gate that says no trespassing. Apparently you think that because you have kids, you have a right to come on my private property and treat it like it's a city park. I proceed to call 911. Karen, you can't kick me out. I used to play here all the time as a child, and the other one used to let me play here too, and let my kids play here. Yes, but we're the new owners, and we're not allowing that. If anything happens to your children on my property, my husband and I are responsible for it, whether you're here or not, and I'm not having it. So take your munchkins and get off my property. My daughter is less than 3 months old, so I think it's more important to take her inside than to deal with Karen. So I pick up her stroller, and I take her in the house to make sure she's warm and safe and give her to my husband who is working from home. Note, my daughter was fine. She was fast asleep through the whole thing. The cops show up and tell her that she can't be here because it's private property, and I reiterate in front of them that she is never allowed on my property, and if she ever comes back or her children come back, I will press charges for trespassing. My husband was on the conference call and couldn't find out to come see what the commotion was about, but I told him afterwards. I'm hoping all my neighbors are not like this. Story 3. So I work for a company that takes a physical inventory for a lot of different retail stores. For each product, we scan the barcode and type in the quantity of the product. But, and this is important, our inventory machines only record the SKU number and quantity, not the item we scanned. A few weeks after I started, I was scheduled to count at a Target about 30 minutes away from my house. Most inventories are not during business hours, but since Target is huge, and we don't have as many employees as we need due to COVID, we had to start a few hours before the store closed, in order to finish before it reopened in the morning. I was in the group counting electronics, and a customer started to ask about some toy out of stock. Anytime we have to count while the store is open, we get a lot of questions like this, so it was no big deal. But we also get promotions based on how many items we count per hour, so I tend to cut people off, tell them I'm just there for inventory, and try to point them towards an actual employee of the store. Well, when I cut this lady off, I couldn't find a Target employee near us, so I suggested going to customer support and returned to my work. After a few more scans, she tapped my shoulder and said, "Well, if you're doing the inventory, your machine should know if the toy is in stock," which I guess is a fair assumption. So I explained that my machine only has inventory of areas that I have personally counted, and I have only done electronics so far. But Target employees should know what's in stock. With this, she stormed off looking angry with a grumpy toddler in tow. I returned to my work, trying to catch up to the counting rate, when a few minutes later, I hear her annoying voice again. I turned to see a confused Target manager and a now crying toddler in the annoying mom's cart. She had apparently told the Target manager that one of his employees was extremely rude to her and made her son cry by ruining his birthday. This caught the attention of my manager, and she started walking over. This lady kept complaining about the toy, her son, and even my purple hair before she let anyone say something. When she finally shut up, my manager asked me what happened, and I explained how she asked me a question for Target employees, so I pointed her to customer support, which made the annoying mom retort, "This lazy kid wouldn't help me, so Target needs to fire her." The Target manager tried to tell her that he can't fire someone who doesn't work for him, but could try to help her find the toy. But the annoying mom just stormed off and said, "If Target is going to hire these types of people, I will never shop here again." The Target manager went back to helping with the inventory, and I tried to apologize to my manager. But she stopped me and said this happens at Targets all the time, so it was no big deal. On the bright side, I got to take an early break and my manager reset my counting rate. Story 4. I was reading a post today that reminded me of something that happened back in 2009. Both of my sons were in middle school and high school at the time, which meant they were old enough to stay home by themselves. I was working the 5 to close shift at the local chain hair salon. We lived in a condo, and the neighbors were notorious for taking someone else's freshly shoveled parking space. Knowing this, I suspected someone would eventually try to take mine. So, I asked my youngest son if he would shovel my parking spot when I called to let him know I was on my way home. I told him I would give him $20 for the effort, and he happily agreed. At 9:05 p.m., I called him, and he went outside to get to work. We had about 6 inches of snow on the ground, and he only needed to shovel enough for my tires to touch the blacktop so that I could get in and out of the spot easily. When I finally got home, I saw him standing there with no cleared space in sight. Instead, there was a shiny new BMW parked exactly where he said he had been shoveling for me. I got out of the car and asked him what had happened. That's when my boy burst into tears. He explained that while he was shoveling, a woman drove up and threatened to run him over if he didn't move out of the way and let her park in the very spot he had just spent 20 minutes clearing for me. He told her he was saving it for his mom, who would be home in just 5 minutes. But instead of understanding, she started honking, yelling, and insisting that he move. Then, to make matters worse, she actually inched her car forward, bumping her front bumper toward him as if she was going to hit him. She used her car to intimidate a 12-year-old boy, all so she could park in a clear spot. The most outrageous part of it all was that she didn't even live there. She was a guest of someone else and should have parked in the designated guest parking area. Since I couldn't park there, I ended up parking in the next lot over and walking back to the condo. By then, my son had gone inside and had calmed down. I checked him over and, thankfully, he wasn't injured, just shaken up and angry. I reassured him that it wasn't worth someone almost hitting him with their car over a snow-free parking space. I gave him the $20 I had promised and told him that some people act selfishly, and the best thing he could do was to forget about it and move on. Part of me wanted to call the police, but I knew it would come down to a case of a wealthy, entitled woman's word against a 12-year-old boy's, since I hadn't witnessed it myself. To make matters worse, we didn't live in the best area, and most of the time, the police didn't seem too interested in handling issues like ours. The next day was a snow day, so there was no school. My boys stayed up playing video games, and eventually my younger son told his older brother, who was 14 at the time, what had happened the night before. My oldest son came to me and asked if it was true that a woman had nearly hit his younger brother with her car just to take a parking spot. I told him to go look outside and see the car for himself. When he came back inside, his expression said it all. He looked at me and asked what we were going to do about this woman. I told him that when I was growing up in Baltimore City, if someone stole your shoveled parking space like that, the common response was to simply shovel them in as a way of teaching them a lesson. At that moment, my oldest son got a determined look on his face. He told his younger brother to grab his coat, put on his boots, and bring a shovel. The boys headed outside around 10 p.m. and spent the next hour working together. From 10 to 11, they shoveled snow from all over the parking lot and piled it high around the woman's BMW. They didn't just block her tires. They built the snow up so much that nearly the entire car was surrounded, leaving only the roof visible. They packed the snow tightly, making sure it wasn't going to be easy for anyone to dig out. I know I probably shouldn't have laughed or encouraged them, but I couldn't help feeling that what they did was justified. After all, this woman had bullied a 12-year-old boy and even used her car to scare him into giving up a parking space. Seeing her car buried in snow for the trouble she caused felt like a fitting consequence. Her car sat there completely snowed in for 3 whole days until the weather finally warmed up and the snow began to melt. During that time, nobody ever figured out that it was my kids who had done it. They managed to keep it a secret, and I never told anyone in the neighborhood. To this day, I still think about that incident and shake my head. Maybe next time that woman will think twice before intimidating a child just to get a parking spot in the winter. Story 5. I am a 30-year-old woman, and I made the decision to cut my mom, who is 66 years old, out of my life 2 months ago. This process has made me realize that so much of my childhood was tainted by her struggles with mental illness. My mother has lived with chronic depression and likely post-traumatic stress disorder. She has been mentally unwell for my entire life. I remember her coming home from work and spending the rest of the day in bed. She would frequently tell me that I was the only thing keeping her from ending her own life. I heard these things regularly when I was just a young child. My earliest memories are from when my parents were still together, so I was, at most, 8 years old. When my father cheated on her, she went from bad to worse. She never truly sought consistent professional help, aside from occasionally seeing a psychiatrist. I vividly remember one night when I was 9 years old. She mixed alcohol with her medication and passed out on my bedroom floor. I had to call emergency services because I genuinely thought my mom was dead. She was treated, but afterward, she thought the entire situation, including my anxiety over nearly watching her die, was hilarious. She went on to have a string of terrible relationships that she stayed in, not caring about the impact they had on me. She only left her main partner when she discovered that he had been lying about working for months, all while she spent her money supporting him. During this time, I was forced to play the role of her therapist, even though I was just a teenager going through an incredibly difficult family situation, one that was already traumatic without her constant instability. When I left for college, I knew she would spiral. Even at 18, when I should have been excited to begin my life, I felt overwhelming concern about leaving my mom alone. Unfortunately, my fears were correct. She would call me nonstop, threatening to cut off my phone service and my health insurance if I didn't answer her. We had constant conflicts as a result, but since I relied on her financially, I always gave in. I had my daughter when I was 26, and I deliberately planned my induction date ahead of schedule so that my mother wouldn't be at the hospital. Thankfully, my baby came a little early, and only my fiancé and my mother-in-law were there with me. Around that time, my mom had also undergone gastric bypass surgery when I was 25, despite my strong objections and the advice of others. Because of that surgery, she was in very poor health. The dosage of the many medications she was taking was dangerously high. She flew out the week I was due to deliver, and it turned into one of the worst weeks of my life. She would regularly nod off in front of my in-laws. At one point, she was eating ice cream in my bed, which she took over right after I had given birth, and nodded so hard that she spilled it all over the brand new bedding my mother-in-law had just bought me. Another time, she fell in the hallway and put a hole in my wall while trying to tell me something. She never apologized, and I ended up spending the first week of my daughter's life cleaning up after her instead of resting and healing. Since my daughter's birth, I've had many realizations about the way my mom parented me, the things I witnessed, and the experiences I endured because of her. Because of my father's action, she always cast herself in the role of the better parent, and for a while, I believed her. But over time, my dad got help, apologized to me, and continues to do so, and has done everything he can to be present in my and my family's lives. Now, when I look at my mother's actions, I feel appalled as a parent. I am also a practicing therapist, and every day I see parents who are trying to heal themselves in order to be better for their children. I have begged, pleaded, and tried every way I know to convince my mother to get help. She is clearly misusing her medication, and it is only getting worse. The last straw came on my birthday in June. I hadn't been home in 2 years, and I planned to spend my 30th birthday with her. 2 weeks before that, on Father's Day, she crashed her car into a building. She had no remorse at all. Her partner, the same man who deceived her when I was a teenager, called me, terrified, because she didn't seem to care that she had caused such a dangerous situation. I would not have even known if he hadn't told me. When I called her, I was admittedly furious. She could have seriously hurt herself or someone else, and she damaged another person's business, yet she didn't care. Instead, she mocked me for being upset, even laughing at me for feeling that my Father's Day with my dad and fiancé was ruined. She was upset that I was angry on their behalf for having to deal with her recklessness. By the time I traveled out, things were already bad. When I saw the condition of her home, I knew immediately that she was not well. It was filthy, full of clutter and junk collected over the years. She could not hold a conversation without nodding off, and I had to wake her repeatedly. She even joked about how I didn't find it funny that she had run her car into someone's business. To make matters worse, she completely forgot my birthday. She offered to take me out to eat, but then refused to go to the restaurant I wanted because her partner would not like it. Later, she misplaced her rental car because she had totaled the other one, even though it was parked right in front of her house. I could not drive the rental, and I didn't feel safe with her behind the wheel, so I left and spent the rest of the day with my childhood best friend instead. That was the moment I was done. We have not spoken in 2 months, and I have no plans to ever speak to her again. She is furious about it. My fiancé refuses to block her number, so she keeps switching between angry threats like threatening to turn off her streaming account and desperate pleas to talk to me or see my daughter. She claims she can't believe she's being kept from her granddaughter, but there is absolutely no way I will expose my child to someone who is misusing substances and refusing to accept help. I have severed all financial ties with her. I have also gotten sober myself. I used to smoke marijuana often, but I made the decision to stop. My mom, however, refuses to take any responsibility. She only sees how her actions affect herself, and she constantly paints herself as a victim while doing nothing to improve her situation or relieve the suffering she causes others. She is completely alone, apart from her partner, who stays with her only because he would be homeless otherwise. Frankly, that is a consequence of her own choices. I feel lighter without the pressure of seeing another text or request to call, especially when she can't even stay awake long enough to hold her head up. But I am also devastated. I am angry, and I wish I could call my mom. I wish I had someone to lean on, to talk about parenting with, and to get advice from. But I don't, and when I reflect on it, I realize I never truly did. She always painted herself as the image of the perfect mother. I know I am not perfect. I constantly doubt whether I am even a halfway decent mom. But I dedicate my life to getting better, and I feel such anger because I know I deserved at least that effort from her. I don't know. This is a lot to take in, and if you have read all of this, know that I am truly bearing my soul. It hurts deeply. I hurt for my mom, who will likely die alone. I hurt for my daughter, who will never get to know her grandmother. I mourn for my younger self, who endured so much without realizing what she deserved from the adults in her life, but who still loved them unconditionally anyway. And I mourn for myself now, for going through the prime years of my life without a mother simply because she refuses to get better. I have tried multiple times to guide her, both as a professional therapist and as someone who has gone through my own healing journey. She refuses my help. Sometimes she will attend a few sessions, but she always finds reasons to quit. Now, at 66, she is misusing medications so badly that she would require a medical detox. At this stage, it feels beyond saving, and I can no longer put myself through the pain of waiting for her to finally follow through on the destructive path she has always threatened to take. It is the crushing realization that I was never enough for her. The professional in me understands that it is her illness. The mother in me is furious. The daughter in me is deeply hurt. And I honestly don't know what to do with all of these emotions, except to give it time and wait for the inevitable phone call that she is gone. Thank you for reading. If you made it this far, I didn't know where else to put all of this, but it feels good to finally get it out. If anyone has had a similar experience, I would love to connect with someone who understands this pain. We don't have to go through it alone. Story 6. Some background. My daughter has had issues with her bladder since she was born. This issue was attached to her school records as it was important that she not wait long when she needs to urinate. She has never abused this and was always quick to return to class. One afternoon in the late winter, I called her school to inform them that she would be absent the following afternoon as she would be attending her grandfather's funeral. I let them know her father would be picking her up. I also told them the reason that I was calling instead of writing a letter, as I was having some medical issues with my writing hand. The day after the funeral, my daughter comes home, and she has some friends with her so they could hang out. One of her friends approached me in a low tone so my daughter would not hear her and told me that Miss Powertrip, that's how we're going to call her, had told my daughter that it was not a legitimate reason to miss class to go to her grandfather's funeral, and the fact that my hand could not even hold a pen was not a legitimate reason to not have a written note. She doesn't accept call-ins even if the rest of school does. I was so shocked at this news that I was completely dumbfounded. I called my daughter up from the family room and asked her if this was true. She said she wasn't going to tell me because she knew I would be upset. She said she had been berated by Miss Powertrip in front of the class. I told her I would take care of it. I called the school and asked to speak to Miss Powertrip. When she answered the phone, I introduced myself first, then said, "I just wanted to know when going to grandparents' funeral is not a legitimate reason for missing class. I think your daughter is exaggerating. You should teach her to tell the truth." I was starting to get angry. My daughter is not the one who told me. There was a moment of silence before Miss Powertrip spoke again. Well, she didn't have a note. I called the school and explained that I have a medical issue with my arm at the moment and cannot write. I do not accept unwritten excuses. Fine, then I shall have someone else write it for me and you can call to verify. I paused for a second, then continued. I do, however, want to make it perfectly clear that I believe you owe my daughter an apology for your remarks on her missing class to pay her last respects to her grandfather. I trust you will take care of that tomorrow. I don't really think that is necessary. Necessary or not, it is the proper thing to do. I trust you will take care of this. She finally agreed. You would think that that would be the end of it, but no such luck. The next day when my daughter went to her class, she handed Miss Powertrip the dictated note for me. It was at that point that she had to go to the washroom and asked to be excused. Miss Powertrip looked at her and said, "You realize you will only have one more washroom break until the end of the semester." My daughter looked at her and said, "I have a medical note attached to my school file that states I have permission to go whenever I need to. That doesn't fool me. I have no time for nonsense and lies. In my class, my rules are the only rules." That afternoon when my daughter got home, she told me about her talk with Miss Powertrip. I was infuriated. Seriously, what is wrong with this woman? I called my doctor and asked for another letter explaining my daughters need to be able to use the washroom as needed. I made 2 copies of it. One for me, the original for the school records, and one to go along with a letter I dictated to her brother. I gave my daughter 2 envelopes to take to school in the morning. One for the office and one for her teacher. I wanted to bring the letters in myself, but because of a medical appointment I couldn't. My appointment had been painful and the medication they gave me made me feel sick to my stomach. My son had taken me to my appointment at 9 o'clock and I wasn't finished until nearly 2:30. When I got home, I got a call from my daughter. She was very upset. Miss Powertrip looked at the letter, then threw it back at her, stating that it didn't change a thing. Her rules were the only ones that mattered. At this point, I was done with this crazy woman. My son had already left the house. I was not able to drive from the medication I had taken, so I started my over 1-mile walk to the school. With every step, my stomach felt like I had the flu. My arm where the injection had been placed was burning, and now my head was hurting. Each step, each pain was just making me angrier and angrier. Without question, I was now in full mama bear mode. I was about 3/4 of the way to the school when a friend of my daughter saw me walking. She pulled her car over. "Where are you headed and where is your car?" "I'm going to the school. My car is home. I'm not allowed to drive right now." "Get in the car. I can drive you." I smiled and said thank you. I know I didn't have too far left to go, but I was very appreciative considering how I was feeling. I opened the big door in the front of the school. I remember it feeling so much heavier today, probably because of the medicine. I am greeted in the entranceway by the school principal. "Hello, ma'am." I look at the principal and say, "I want to speak to Miss Powertrip now." She is teaching a class right now. I do not care. I want to speak with her. You seem upset. I am very upset. Perhaps I can help. Very well. You can give her a message, and you can forward that to any other teacher that wants to challenge me when it comes to my child's health. The principal looks baffled and obviously does not know about the teacher's response to the letter and medical instructions that had been sent to her. When it comes to my daughter's health, my rules over all other rules. Please explain to me what is going on. After I told the principal everything that had happened, he did not hesitate to assure me that he would talk to Miss Powertrip, and my daughter will have no more issues with her. I really hope that this is now rectified. I can assure you, if there is any more of this nonsense that could cause her any medical issues, the next time someone comes up to this school won't be me. It will be my lawyer, Mr. Feared by All, with a lawsuit and charges of endangering a minor. The principal was shocked at who my lawyer was. He had a reputation of going after government agencies when they didn't play by the rules. The principal knew this was very serious, and from the expression on my face, he could tell that I was dead serious. I shook the principal's hand. I had somewhat calmed down. I left feeling that this was finally resolved, but I was wrong. The next time my daughter went to Miss Powertrip's class, she had an evil smirk on her face and snickered as my daughter sat down. I don't care what anyone says. In my class, there are only my rules regardless of who says what. My daughter, realizing that this teacher wanted to dart an argument to try to get her in trouble, didn't say a word. She simply got up from her desk and left the class. She called me right away. I couldn't believe the audacity of this woman. I couldn't take any more of this, so I made a call to my lawyer friend. Within minutes of telling him what was going on, he said he would make a call. He asked me if I wanted to sue. I told him if they remove my daughter from that class and put her in a different one, and respect the medical note on the student records for her, then no. But if there is one more incident by any employee at that school, then I most certainly will be suing. Within minutes, my lawyer had called the school board. Now for the quick response that I received from my daughter's school. I am guessing that the school board had barely hung up from the lawyer's call and had called the school right away. The principal called me. "Hello, is this Mrs. X?" "Yes." "I thought this issue was over." "So did I, but apparently your teacher seems to think differently. So I did what I said I would if things were not changed. Please be assured that your daughter will now finish that class with Mr. Nice Teacher, and Miss Powertrip has received a suspension. Also, if your daughter has any more problems like this, she is to come to my office right away, and I will be sure to rectify the situation immediately." The principal was really apologetic and gave me his word on making sure her medical note was followed. I thanked him and said goodbye. The principal was true to his word, and my daughter was transferred to the other class with Mr. Nice Teacher.